Morning, everyone. Ricardo Wilkins here, your Microsoft Customer Success Manager for Teams and Office 365, and another weekly webinar, Friday, 10 a.m. As always, you're here to ask any questions you may have about Teams. I'm hoping I can answer them. And if you have no questions, I try to talk about a topic, and that's why I have this video up that I was playing as before we began, because I thought while I wait for questions, I might talk about whiteboarding in Teams, which I get a lot of questions about whiteboard versus OneNote, and especially for our government customers who are still waiting for whiteboard to hit GCC. What can we do while we wait for whiteboard, which usually my response is OneNote. So the video there is one of mine that I created, actually, it looks like many years ago, just showing, using that's on an old Surface Pro 1, I think, but that is OneNote kind of in full screen with a Surface Pen, and I was just showing a lot of different inking kind of techniques there. But what I wanted to do is just show what it looks like to do these things, or to do a whiteboard concept in Teams, both with the whiteboard app or OneNote. But again, between now or at any time though, any questions, even if it's not related to whiteboard, feel free to put them in the Q&A chat, and I'll keep checking that to see what's there. So I'm gonna go here into my environment, and this is a commercial version of Teams. And the reason I'm using commercial again is because I'm going to show the whiteboard app, and that's not yet in the GCC version that I would usually use for this kind of thing. So here I've got a channel meeting that I created earlier. Just going to use that to pop into a meeting. I did set it up with another user in this demo tenant, but I'll go ahead and join. Because obviously the question typically is, the reason there's interest in whiteboard these days, whiteboarding, I should say, as a concept. We're having more virtual meetings these days. We're not in a conference room where I normally would get up on the whiteboard and draw this out. So, how can I do this instead? So here we are in a meeting. My other user hasn't joined yet, but that's okay. While I wait for him, I will fire up Whiteboard. And so you can see, obviously, we're sharing, we're hitting the sharing button. We can share desktop window, and I'll get back to sharing on the window or desktop side when it comes to OneNote. But in terms of the Whiteboard, we see we have an integrated Whiteboard app here. So it's loading the Whiteboard. And it's actually asking me if I want to open the app, which I am going to show in a sec, but I do want to let it go ahead and, as it says here, use Whiteboard in Teams instead. And it's firing up. And we're pretty much in and ready to go. You can see I'm using actually my mouse here. If you are like me and have Surface devices with Surface pens and you totally love them and are addicted to the pen, then you would probably pull your pen out and do this instead for an even better writing experience. It's not bad with the even with the mouse. I mean, the one thing I'm noticing is the lack of super jagged lines that I'm used to seeing when people are writing with their mouse. But I don't know that I would typically use my mouse to try to write something up in an actual meeting. But in any event, so yes, we have the Whiteboard here. Obviously, we can do all the pen related things. We can add erasers and everything to erase the strokes and whatnot. And in general, relatively basic functionality. Just as a little background on the Whiteboard app, I mean, this is the same kind of or similar Whiteboard experience you would experience on our Surface Hub devices. So if you've got one of those big, 80-inch touchscreen devices and, fully integrated with your Office 365, this is the kind of thing you would see. You'd be using the Surface Hub pen and doing the same kind of writing on a large board. So obviously what's nice about this is everyone in the meeting would be able to see this and, and interact with it. I'll fire up the other user here and bring him in so we can see that experience as well. And while I'm doing that, I see a question. Will you review how we can move other parties from the meeting to another meeting and back? How to best support private conversations with some? So feels like kind of like a breakout room kind of a question. Let me do that. That's a good question, actually. So, I mean, all questions are good, I should say. But let me just get this thing, get the administrator fired up here. I'm going. All right. Have him join the meeting. Let's test one. He'll join. Join now. It's loading Whiteboard because that's what's currently being shared. He has the opportunity to do it in the app or Teams. We'll go ahead and let it be Teams. It's already starting up, and you can see as I kind of go a little bit side to side here, both parties in the app relatively quickly syncing each other. So everybody's writing on this big whiteboard in the meeting. We can see it on both sides. You'll notice my administrator account here is in the browser and still doing this. Ricardo here is in the full desktop client, and we're getting it done. Okay, so being able to basically write things out. Again, if both parties had pens, these lines look even better, but it's not bad actually. Okay, so we'll leave that there for a second, and I do want to address this question. So for instance, first off, private conversations. So here I am with the administrator, myself in that meeting, hovering over someone. I get the standard card for them, and I can just, whether it's here or whether it's actually hitting the chat button and taking me all the way over to chat. You can see the message I just made. This is now our full chat area. My meeting's still going. Administrator, while the meeting is going, is getting notifications here about the chat. So we can have a side conversation for sure, right? We can do this all day long, and that can be with anyone, right? It's just one-to-one chat that I just happen to be in a meeting while I'm doing it. So that would be my first. Give my tray back. Be my first thing for the question of supporting private conversations. It's just to chat, one-to-one with them. And really, I guess the other way to say that is my entire chat experience is completely available to me even when I'm in a meeting. So even if I needed to fire up a group chat with several people in that meeting, I can do everything that I would normally do with Teams, even while I'm in a meeting. You can see that meeting just conveniently gets pushed up here, separate from everything else that I might do in Teams. In terms of moving parties from meeting to another meeting and back, I mean, one approach there, given that every meeting or meeting room, or however you want to put it, is simply a separate meeting link, I could, essentially put new meeting links, here in the chat for people to click on. So, I could come here to calendar. I could, create a new meeting. Again, I got full functionality of Teams even while I'm in the meeting. So I could create a new meeting, which would give me a link. I could take that link and post it in the chat and, tell people, hey, this meeting I just created is breakout room number 1. Anybody interested in that? Click on that, and they would, go into that. Now, let's just do that real quick. Again, I'm assuming this question is kind of a breakout room question. We'll make it a channel meeting somewhere. Let's put it here. We'll hit send and move that out of the way. There's my breakout room. It looks like it's still getting created. Again, I'm still in the meeting as I'm doing all of this. Let's go over to the team itself. I can come and go inside and maybe I could actually just copy this whole thing so I don't have to do the long URL. Come back to my meeting, go to my participants tab after Whiteboard loads up. Whiteboard's apparently unaffected by all this other stuff I'm doing as well. Go in the chat. Hey everyone, here's breakout room 1. All right, that's Ricardo that has posted that. Administrators interested. Go to my chat here. Click that. Test 1's on hold there. I'll go ahead and join breakout room 1, see what cool things are going on there. Nobody's here. This room is a dud. Let me go back to test 1, join that fancy cool whiteboard again. So to me, that's the concept of being able to jump around in rooms, having private conversations, and really just showing, how I can be fully functional in Teams while all this stuff is going on. Pop-out chats are, on the way as well, which would maybe make this a little more intuitive, as this meeting would be in its own chat, and then I'd have the entire interface of Teams at my disposal, although it was, the meeting was just in a little square. It wasn't really too much in my way, but it'll get even better when the pop-out chats come. So hopefully that answers that question. While we're here with the Whiteboard app, again, we are using it here in Teams, but let's take a look at what the app looks like if we were to open that. So let's open an app. Actually, I already had it open, but you can see it seamlessly opened up the app right where, in its current state. You can also see bobbleheads, or whatever you want to call them, for the people that are um, in this whiteboard. There were more people, obviously more bobbleheads. We can obviously invite people into whiteboards too. I'll say that the whiteboard app right now is, again, for people in your organization. I don't think I'd be inviting, can invite like outside people into this. So this would be it for inviting other folks in my company. But you'll see with the whiteboard app now, we've got more things than just the pens. And what you can't really necessarily see here is the fact that you really have to experience this with an actual pen, is that the writing experience is a lot more fluid in the app. Again, to you here in this session, it looks the same because I'm using my mouse here. But if you actually had a pen writing on a touch device, and we're drawing in the whiteboard app in Teams versus drawing in the whiteboard native app, I think you would find a more pleasant experience. I should make pleasant isn't the right word, but a better experience with the pen in the native app than the one that's integrated into the Teams client. So again, I can't really show that here, but you just have to take my word for it or try it yourself. But again, you see, I got pens obviously, and then I start getting my other things like all these other features that the Teams app has for us. Get rid of some of these things. So that's the pens. We have things like being able to put images in, and I think I can even gonna try to do a little screenshot here. Do a paste. That's just a screenshot of my desktop. But you can see I can move that around, obviously, make it bigger, roll it around, all this cool stuff. Notes, stickies that I could put on here and move those around, text itself. So all that good stuff. All the things well, not all the things you would expect, but a lot of cool whiteboard things, right? So again, I'm getting a lot of these additional features and fluidness because of the native app. Meanwhile, the administrator here in the browser is seeing all of that and is still able to collaborate with me as well. All right. See the little icon showing me who just did that art, which is important if there's 5 or 10 people in here all trying to draw. It's nice to get that indicator of who's doing what. So that is the whiteboard app in general. So if you're in the commercial, this is available to you now and should work just fine. Let me now go here. I'm going to close the native app here, go back to the Teams client where everything was still keeping up as well. I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to share OneNote now through, and I'm going to share. There's no like OneNote share here, but what I'm going to do is just open up OneNote. Actually, this is the desktop version. Doesn't actually matter. I actually want the OneNote for Windows 10. So those of you that may be new to OneNote, there are 2 versions today. The more modern OneNote for Windows 10 and the more, I kind of want to say legacy or OneNote desktop client. FYI, I have a session on OneNote that I did in the Microsoft 365 virtual marathon that happened a few weeks ago. I talked about 9 tips for OneNote and talked about a lot of the things related to desktop versus OneNote for Windows 10. That YouTube recording should be available sometime soon here. I'll be sure to share that out for anybody that's interested in the world of OneNote. do that later. So let's say this and let's share out. So I got that open. Let's go here and share that. It's this one here. Okay, so we're sharing. I will go, you can see obviously administrator already sees it. Go back to my client. Oh, so actually, oh yeah, there's nothing in that interface I really need. So I can do what I need to do in this OneNote client that I'm sharing. Here's the administrator that's also in the meeting, watching what I do. I'll move this guy over here. So you can see here, you know, as we'd expect, everything I'm sharing is here. And we can kind of see that, you know, OneNote's been around for, I don't know, a couple decades and has been doing art or drawing, digital ink, Windows ink. So we can still do that here. You see it's very similar to what we were doing in the Whiteboard app. And then, you know, we got shapes, we got text. See if I still got my screenshot. Yep, still got my screenshot that was in my clipboard. I can still put that in here. I don't get I don't get to do the fancy rotates you saw in the Whiteboard app, but I still get, you know, images which I can annotate on top. Oops, where am I? Here and here. Annotate on top of. Again, I'm using the mouse. That's why I made sure to click this button. It's essentially I'm using my mouse / finger if this was if I was, you know, on a device, as opposed to taking that off and then it would be expecting an actual pen when I was trying to use these drawing tools. Yeah, all the good stuff that we're kind of used to seeing, right? So you can see very similar. What am I missing? That little yellow sticky that I saw on the whiteboard, it's not there. Rotating these pictures. That big ruler actually is here, right? I think OneNote, I don't know which one got it first, but yeah, all those things are there. So this everyone has, right, including government customers. The only other thing, I guess, though, the convenience of having automatically added my meeting participants into this isn't there. So ideally, the notebook I would share in this channel meeting would be a notebook that's sitting in the files area of that channel. That way I know everyone has access to it. At that point, then I'd want to either give them the link or tell folks to, you know, go open the so-and-so notebook. Once they do that, we're all in here. We're all able to collaborate on it together. And I didn't show that here, right? I should have had a notebook open that the administrator had easy access to. We could have seen that. But again, if the administrator was in this notebook, OneNote, you know, is real-time collaboration. It was the first to really do co-authoring before it was, you know, really a thing with the rest of Office. So the administrator could be in here creating text and ink, and I would see it, and it would be the same experience as the OneNote app. The other difference I usually point out, though, is that OneNote seems a little better. The Whiteboard app is really about the whiteboard. OneNote has whiteboard capabilities, but is also all about, you know, just good old-fashioned text and you know, and things like that. So here I'm, you know, writing text, and it's going to be the kind of typical text you would expect, and bullet points and all those things are going to work, and it's great. I can move them around. That Whiteboard app, I probably didn't show it a lot, but I mean, it was doing big, you know, artsy kind of text. I don't know that I'd write a whole book in the Whiteboard app the way I might do in OneNote. And then there are certainly tons of other features in OneNote that Whiteboard doesn't even try to do. Again, it's very specific to a whiteboard experience. OneNote is allowing you to have whiteboard experience, but also doing, you know, many other things. In fact, even the one I was showing here, which was from, which was from my session, is this idea that, you know, I got this embedded video in here simply because OneNote is able to look at many different kinds of file formats. And when I post the URL to a stream video or to a YouTube video, it thinks about it, and then it goes and actually automatically embeds it, and it's playable, right within the OneNote page and all that good stuff. So that's just one of many, features that OneNote has that Whiteboard isn't trying to do, because it's being very specific to the whiteboard concept. Okay. So hopefully that shows the difference. For those that are in commercial, it shows what you can do today. For those that are in government, it shows what is coming, at some point in terms of the Whiteboard app. Or for either party, it shows that you also have an alternative. Your good old friend OneNote that's been around since forever is still rocking and rolling and can still, get some cool things done, in terms of a whiteboard experience. So hopefully that was helpful. All right. All right. I will come back here and stop sharing. Yep. Let's go here and get out of that meeting. There we go. Awesome. Any other questions while we have about 4 minutes? Again, hopefully everyone's been enjoying the 9 screens, the raised hand, the what else? Launch tree, the custom backgrounds. Those are all things that are relatively new. And I think what I can also show here, if I get back into this meeting, for commercial, you have this download attendance list, which basically does a spreadsheet of who attended, like what time they joined and left the meeting. Many people have been waiting for that. Not in GCC yet, but at least you can kind of see what it looks like when it's coming. I think its first iteration, you got to make sure you download this list before you leave the meeting, I think is the only caveat. But otherwise, it's just great for, again, being able to have this one click that captures who was actually in your meeting versus who was actually invited, right? Who actually attended, what time they attended, what time they left. If you're trying to give people credit for training or something like that, very useful button there. All right. Any questions, comments, thoughts? And I'll sit here for a sec because I know there's a delay between two, so I'll sit for a sec. I'll actually just sit here until about the 10:30 time frame, and then I'll close it out. So again, please put any questions you have in the chat area. So the administrator could be in here creating text and ink, and I would see it, and it would be the same experience as the OneNote app. The other difference I usually point out, though, is that OneNote seems